Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This young man, James Crossman, came with Dr. Shung Tu when they had the three of them come and play on our piano some time ago. And he was now he's a senior next week, and he is a dual enrolled as piano performance major and pre-med. And so I asked him, would he please come and tell us how you do that? Because both of them are full-time studies. And he played while he was here, and look at the piano. It's set up for him to play later. He's also the ambassador for the School of Music, so he gets around, and we're lucky to have him. Welcome, and tell us all about it.
Sure. Thank you. So my name, as he said, is James Crossman. I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida, so I've been a Floridian my whole life. I'm a third generation Gator. My grandfather got his master's here, my dad his undergrad, my mom her MD, and then now I'm here getting my undergrad. Oh. That's a little loud. We'll get there eventually. I can put it further away too. Yeah. So as Mr. Walters said, I am going to be a senior this year at the University of Florida. Ooh. Is that okay? Oh yeah, it's fun. And I'm studying piano performance and kind of the technical major that it's called is music in combination with an outside field. So I'm studying music, but within that is another field where, for me, I chose pre-med. And the way that the program works out, it really makes it work really well. I didn't think it would be possible to do, as I'll talk a little bit about later about kind of how I got to college. But then with that, so the goal of this is not only just to make y'all very knowledgeable on my major and what I'm doing with my life, but hopefully it'll give some things that you can apply within your lives in terms of music and how you look at life. So starting off with some background to me, like as I said, I grew up in the Daytona Beach area, and I started taking piano lessons when I was 6 or 7 in first grade. So I've been playing for about 15 years now. And then when my family moved out to a farm, we got horses. So I started riding horses. I've shown up at the regional level. So I even have gone out to Georgia and stuff. And then I started getting into training and thought for a while that I wanted to do that professionally. So I was riding with this guy he was a phenomenal trainer, and he would go around the whole North America, like up in Canada and all across the United States to do clinics. But then as I've looked at that more and more, I'm like, I need something that's going to be a good solid career, because the point of a job isn't just for to be doing something you love. While that is really nice if you're able to find something you love, but it's also to be able to support everything that you like doing. So, and really, so that kind of sums up my life growing up. I grew up in a great household. I love my parents and my family. We're still very close, so it's good. So to get us going, since y'all know a little bit about where I'm from and me, so then we talk about, why am I doing music and pre-med? Why would I be that crazy? So for music, why would I be doing music? So I grew up taking piano lessons, as I said, but in addition to that, there's always music within my home, within my house. Like my mom was always singing to us with stuff. My older sisters were all in band, and we went to tons of band functions. And so is me. When I turned 6 or 7 and the option for piano lessons came up, I was like, oh yeah, that's the cool thing to do, because all my older sisters are doing it, so it's the best thing. But and then in addition to that, I played a lot of church music. So I was in my church, I was very active. And as I was getting older, then there would be sometimes when the normal pianist would be out of town or be busy. So then I would start learning how to play. And it was rough for the first couple of years when I would be playing on and off. And then it's gotten to where now when I'm back home, I'm able to give him a break, because a lot of times he's preaching and doing other things. So I'm able to take over that part of things. But so I think that this is kind of a good time to pause and kind of have our first music break where we play a couple things. So how I said that I've played a lot in church and also within classical music, I figured it'd be neat to have something that kind of fits into both realms. So I'm going to start with a song that's called How Deep the Father's Love for Us, that I love a lot. And then I'll pull out something that's a little bit classical after that. So I'll talk about that one a little bit after I play this first one. And then the other piece I'm going to play, I played back in March when I was here, and it's from a piece called Faschingsschwank aus Wien by Robert Schumann. It's movement 3 of that, called the Scherzino. So it's kind of like a lighthearted, kind of more playful piece, and I think you'll hear that in it as I play. A little rough getting going, but we made it through. So, so that kind of was kind of an introduction to kind of the two worlds of music I was in. I was in the church music and I was in the classical music, where I started taking classical lessons, and then I started playing church stuff, and I had to learn, wait, how do you play chords? It was a whole new concept for me that it took a while for me to get to where I could do, but once we got there, I've loved it, and it expanded what I can do both classically and in terms of church music, with my classical music helping that. So that kind of moves us on to, why would I go into medicine if I love music so much? So kind of the first thing was, I saw my mom's example of what it looked like to be a doctor. I saw how she loved her love for people, and how she always would be caring for people. And like, I think about when there would be some of our close friends from our church who there were some ladies who went through miscarriages, and how she would walk them through that, both as a doctor who knew what happened medically, and then also as a mom who had gone through that herself as she was having kids. Like, she had to struggle with the same thing. So she saw what it meant to both be able to handle that emotionally, and also what was going on physically, and what are things that she can do to help support them through that time. In addition to that, just like, I really love people. Like, think about how in the Bible, like, I'm a Christian, so if you hear me talk about the Bible, it just comes with me. How when Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He says, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And then he says, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And then he goes into this whole discourse of who is your neighbor, ultimately ending in saying that it is everyone on this earth, because we are all part of the human race, and we all are living on the same planet. So our job is to love each other, not in some sort of sexual way, but just love as meaning sacrificing for others and giving of yourself to others. So before we talk about how they all fit together, like, I feel like it's helpful to see how I got to college, because that's how they fit together for me. It doesn't make sense for me to have just gone to college and be like, oh, I'm just going to study music and pre-med. It'll be great. And that's what I've always wanted to do. I've been on the fence between, am I going to go med school? Am I going to go be a concert pianist? Ooh, I'm not a good enough pianist to be a concert pianist. And then back to med school because of that. So it's a lot of fun to go back and forth. So I look at the start of my senior year. Let's see if yes. So yeah, but as I looked at colleges, I thought, where am I going to go? What am I going to study? What am I going to do with it when I graduate? Because that's even more important than what are you going to study. Like, if there's no reason to go to college, why would I be going and spending money to go to school when I could just find a job somewhere and make money? So at the start of my senior year, I was dual enrolled at Daytona State College, the local community college, where I was finishing up my AA, and I was starting to take calc and organic chemistry because they had them there and there were some great classes there. And I had also just gone back from here at UF. I came to the piano camp here, the International Piano Festival, that it was just like a week-long intensive program of, you're taking lessons with professors, you're playing in master classes, you're playing in recitals and concerts. There's a competition at the end of the week, and you're living on campus. So you're living the life of a music student for a week. And I loved it. So I was like, I really want to do music. But then looking at what it means to be a career, I was like, ooh, that doesn't make sense, because you have to be really good in order to make enough money to live as a pianist. But as I thought about college, I thought, should I stay at community college? Should I go off to university? And what should I do with that? Like, should I do pre-med? Should I do music? So having just gotten back from the International Piano Festival, I knew UF is a great school. My oldest two sisters had gone to UCF, so I knew their piano program was also very good, but I liked UF better. And plus I wanted to be a Gator. So I was thinking I wanted to go to UF. And then I had the opportunity back home to shadow a vascular surgeon who worked for UF as part of, like, there's some communication between the hospitals that is back home and UF, is they have some relationships to where UF was starting to take over some of their specialties. So as I got to shadow this vascular surgeon, I loved it. And like seeing everything he was doing, and like it was beautiful. And I loved it. And it was a great environment too. And seeing how he interacted with his staff, I was like, this is what I want to do. And then I shadowed a neurosurgeon, and it was amazing as well. And I was like, wow, this is amazing too. So as I got exposed to more and more specialties, I realized, honestly, I can't go wrong by going into medicine. Really, wherever I end up, I'll love it. And then I also I've been working at a primary care office over the summers, and I've loved that too. So I started realizing that, if I go to med school, really wherever I end up is going to be a great field, great job security. I love doing it, and you get enough money to live on. So that's always nice. But let's see what's next. So I applied to the University of Florida and a couple other schools, but my main school is UF because I was like, I know the piano faculty there. I know they have this program that looks like I could do pre-med and music at the same time. And so I looked at, well, I'm just going to apply to UF. We'll apply for music, but we'll also apply for biochemistry because that's a real major. And I know that's a good major. And music, I was thinking at the time, that's kind of like a fake thing. It wouldn't be any real help to me. So I applied to both, and I got into both. I'm like, oh, this doesn't help me. This doesn't make the decision for me. It would have been nice if I could have just gotten into one, and then that would have been like, oh, well, that's what I'm doing. But I got into both. And then in addition to that, I got a scholarship for piano. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe this is a good idea, actually. They want to give me money. I'll take it. So as I was looking at their programs, what I realized is, like, I could do music in combination where I'm still pre-med and I'm doing music. And I was like, this is perfect. I don't have to make the decision yet. I don't have to decide whether I'm going to med school yet. I can just go to college and enjoy my time there. But I knew that I would eventually be having to make that decision. And I'm still in the process of making that decision, what it looks like in the timeline. But right now I'm set on going to med school, but I'm not quite sure of how the timeline is going to look. Right now, the plan is I'm going to take the MCAT next summer and then hopefully start med school fall of 2025. So I got a couple of years. But so as I was deciding between the two, I was looking at, but music isn't a real major. It's kind of a fake degree. And then like chemistry, I was like, that's a real degree. And that was something that, like, my parents, they talked about as you were going off to college, like, what are you going to do with it? Not just, are you going to enjoy it in the moment? Like, is it going to be something you'll use? So I ended up deciding to go with the music degree because I'm like, I'm still pre-med. I can still do everything I need to for that. and I get to move my piano along to the next level because I really love the piano and I love playing. And I didn't want to lose that when I went off to college. I wanted to have something where I was still forced to play. And that's what kind of the music major has allowed me to do. And it's also given me a lot of great friends. It's opened up opportunities like this. It opened up to where now I'm in a research lab under Dr. Brian Ho, who's the head of the neurosurgery department. Like, it's created so many opportunities that I didn't think would have come from being a music major. But then we get back to why would we do them together? This is the ultimate question, is why would we join them together? Because it's a lot more work. Like I look at with piano last spring, I was practicing 4 hours a day, not even including any studying for classes, just for practicing piano and to be able to play the piano at the level I was needing to last semester. And so what I did was I looked at, well, that doesn't look like that's a sustainable thing. And how would that fit into taking the physics, the biochemistry, the organic chemistry, all these hard STEM classes that I hear people taking 4 or 5 hours a day to practice or study for. So I look at, if I'm practicing piano for 4 hours a day, and I'm having to study for that for 4 hours a day, where do I have time to do anything else, like any of my other classes or spending time with friends, working out or doing anything? I mean, I know I don't look like I work out that much, but I do a little bit. So what I looked at is it also gives me, in terms of positives, like that's just the negative side of things, is that I'm really busy and I don't have time to do anything throughout the semester. But I look at it on the positive side, it allows me to see what life looks like from an alternate perspective, because you have all these pre-med people going through the basic biochemistry and all those things. And then with me being music, I see kind of more of the emotional side of life, which will help me as I see the physical side of things in med school. And as I'm looking at everything, I'm able to see what the whole person needs, not just what their physical needs are. Like, yes, it's the physical needs are the main purpose of being a doctor, and your job is to make sure they're in the best physical health that they can be and trying to help them in that. But such a big factor in that is where they are emotionally, and how much like depression and like a lot of emotional things play into what you are and what you're like and how you live your life. And it can really either really help you or really hurt you depending on where you're at. But I looked at with music, what that allowed me to do was see, and something I really enjoyed, which a lot of people didn't, was the music history, especially because I got to see how music shaped the culture and how the culture shaped music. And looking at a lot of things, a lot of these people who were the great musicians of the eras, they were people in positions of authority and power. And there were some that were doctors. And we saw such a great wide variety of people who were musicians and how music helped them with that. And on another note, in terms of a more like technical aspect, since I was thinking about being a neurosurgeon, I looked at when I was shadowing a neurosurgeon, one of the things he told me is that a lot of the best neurosurgeons are either left-handed or play an instrument, especially piano, because that requires hand-eye coordination with both hands, where you're having to look at your sheet music, read what the sheet music says, and do it with your hands without really looking down and having to watch your hands the whole time. And what I realized is, I have the left-handed box checked off, so we got that. And then the other one with music, I'm like, well, I play piano, which is one of the best instruments for that, and being able to get a lot of that good hand-eye coordination. So I saw that and I was like, wow, that really sets me up really well for this, actually. Like, even though like it's such an unconventional route, it sets me up so well for everything that I've been wanting to do with it. And on a last note, I feel like being a music major also grows my interpersonal skills and being able to talk with people. Because I look at a lot of people, they go to the doctor, they're looking for someone who's an amazing doctor, but they also want someone they can talk to and feel like understands them and is a good doctor to have, because they are able to talk with them and be able to talk to them. So I feel like being a musician means I have to know how to schmooze people. So if I can do that, I'm fine. So I look at it as I enjoy being around people, and music was a way I was able to do that. And it was able to help grow my ability to talk to different groups of people. And it grew my professionalism in that I'm having to present myself professionally, to perform, to talk to people, to do everything that I do. It takes a note of professionalism. So as I talk about why I did it, this is fun. This is for later. But why I did it. Just it gave me the versatility of not having to make that choice, but still being able to pursue both paths. And I loved music, and it let me be able to continue that at the next level. And then lastly, they give me money. So people will do anything for money. and and it just was a way that I was able to say, this actually is going to help support me as I'm going off and doing med school. It's a lot of my choices that I made as I grew up were both emotional, but also very practical. And I feel like the mixing of the two is what makes it a good choice, in that you're able to weigh in the emotions, but also look at how does this play out practically. So for just some of the interesting things I saw in how music is able to practically play out into how life is I think about with music's role in brain development. I remember when I was in high school, I did some research and I had to actually present something about how music, playing an instrument versus just listening to music, affects the brain. And there were a lot of studies with 6-year-olds where they did something where they had a test group where they just had them just listen to music all the time and listen to a lot of classical music. And then they had another group that they had actually learning the instruments as they were starting to learn their ABCs and everything. And they saw that the people who were playing instruments were progressing at about twice the speed as those who were just listening to music. And then they've done studies with college students who, as they're taking a test, they have them listening to music and they'll score about 10% higher as they're listening to music. And then when they take away the listening to music, then they'll taper off over a course of about 5 or so minutes. Whereas with people who played instruments, they started playing music with it and they went up to that 10%. And then they stayed there for the entire test when they took away the music. So it was something that improves how the brain communicates, because you're having to constantly, as you're playing an instrument, you're listening to what you're doing. And then you're having to adjust what you do based on what you're listening. And that's really all it is in being a musician. So then as you're taking a test or doing something else, you're having to adjust what you do as you go, and you're having to hopefully get the right answers. But it was something really neat that I saw. And then it grew my interpersonal skills, as I talked about earlier, and the coordination for surgery. Like, there are two things that a lot of people say is what a lot of good surgeons do: is either they're musicians or they play video games. Because the video game controllers now, with having to have that hand-eye coordination, it's specific buttons and specific tasks with specific distances. So with that, I was like, well, I don't really play video games, so I guess music is what I'm going to do. And that's going to be what'll prepare me for surgery in a lot of ways. In addition to the research lab I'm in, having done surgery on some mice and different things, and it's been a wonderful experience. So I think, yes. So being a music major, it allowed me the versatility to continue in music and be able to really advance that and get to where I'm able to perform like what I did today. Although, I mean, I don't know if I would call that good today, but but then it also allowed me to stay in the world of pre-med and continue my passion there, because I look at music isn't a super solid career, whereas medicine right now, it's a great career to be in, great job security. And I love the field and like working in it. In the primary care office I've been in over the summer, I would go to work, I would be working all day, and I go home more energetic than when I got there. Like, I'm excited to go to work when I'm at that primary care office. So just realizing that work, while it is work, it's also something that you can be proud of and enjoy. So now, so that takes us to our next music break. Yep. But yeah, so for the next piece of music we're gonna play, I had some kind of internal discussion in my head yesterday as I was kind of deciding the last little bit, because I had like a wide plethora of stuff I could choose from. I was trying to think, what is something that would be good in terms of like both something y'all would enjoy and also something I would enjoy. So I found something that it's a fairly simple piece, but it's a lot of fun to play for me. It's the if any of y'all have like seen the Phantom of the Opera before, they made it into a movie, and then during the end credits they play this song called "Learn to Be Lonely," and it's such a beautiful piece. I love it, and it's very simple, but it's so pretty. So I wanted to share that one with you. but it's a sad title, but it's such a pretty piece. I love it so much. It's one that I always run back to. I first learned that one when I was in about 9th, 10th grade, somewhere around there, as we had a book that had a lot of the pieces from the Phantom of the Opera. And I learned the main theme, the Phantom of the Opera, and then I went through and I learned that one. And there was such beauty within it. And Andrew Lloyd Webber is an amazing composer. So now they're all refreshed after that. Then, so I look at how does this then apply to today as we start wrapping it up, is we look at, well, how music therapy has been in the world today and it's grown a lot over the last 20 years. I remember reading an article from NPR where there was a guy who had a stroke and it had completely shut off the part of his brain that used to talk. So then what they did was he could still sing stuff. So they had him sing, and then just over time, they just slowly tapered down the highs and lows of singing to where he relearned to talk. Now, he was really just singing and just not having a lot of inflection in the singing, but he relearned how to talk because of music and because of music therapy. And there was someone who was coming in who was meeting with him every day, who was a musician. And then in maintaining coordination, I see a lot of like older people who they start losing function as they grow old, and they stop doing things that they love because they aren't as active as they used to be, and they aren't able to quite go out and play tennis anymore, or go out and play basketball and do everything they used to do. So they start losing some of their function. And I see music is an amazing way to be able to maintain that function. A lot of people who I meet, they say, oh, well, I'm too old to learn now. And I'm like, no, that's garbage. You can learn at any age. Now, you aren't going to be some world famous musician like my piano professor is, but you can still learn how to play the things you love. Like that piece that I learned, I bet that all of y'all could have it learned within a month, even if you've never played the piano before. It's really something that I look at it and I see, wow, this is such an amazing thing that you're able to continue keeping the hand-eye coordination going, keeping the fingers moving, and keeping on using everything. And it's something that'll help as people get older. And then it's a lot of interesting stuff where you're having to do a lot of feedback with how you hear things. You hear yourself playing the instrument, and then you have to use what you hear to change how you play. And it's something that I think will never kind of grow out of style. I know that over the last 20 or so years, we've seen a lot of shift from, well, I'll say more like over the last 100 or so years. Like I think about my dad growing up. Back when he was growing up, it was when if someone has enough money, they have a piano in their house. And it used to be back before they had TV. That was the entertainment, is people would gather around the piano, they would sing together, they would entertain each other. And then it's changed to where now it's, oh, we watch something on Netflix. And I personally, like, I wish that we could just go back to the piano side of things, because it created a lot more bonding between people. And I think about like my grandfather, when he was in the military, he was in the Army, when he was writing back, he would write back to his parents every week. And as he wrote, he would pause halfway through and he wrote, oh, I hear someone playing some rag on the piano in the mess hall, so I'm going to go down there. So he would go down there and do that. And that was their entertainment. And it created a lot of camaraderie between people, and it drew people closer together. And that's the other reason that I love music for. It's really beautiful. And let's see. Yep. So in review, music is something that, like, it's part of brain development. It's something that it teaches kids how to connect things and how to hear things. And it's not even just on the surface level, because then you start having to dive into, what am I hearing? And then what do I need to change in order to get to this sound? And then what if I want to actually change what I want it to sound like to a different emotion? So I could play the same thing two different ways, and it would be completely different pieces based on what I want it to be like in the moment. So it's something that it creates a lot of depth of emotion, and will teach kids how to be able to display these emotions. This is a beautiful way to be able to, as you're struggling with different emotions, as you get older and you try to figure out, what does it mean to live and be an adult? And so it's beautiful. So music is also therapeutic, both emotionally and physically. It's, for the emotions, it's such a beautiful way to be able to express your emotions and be able to deal with them in a way that is productive and isn't going to hurt other people, and is able to actually share with other people what you're going through. And then physically, thinking about, like, as music therapy with the guy who had a stroke, with people as they get older, like, there's another neat thing. This is random rabbit trail, but having seen something where a guy, he had a corpus colostomy surgery, so where they cut off the kind of connection between the two halves of the brain. And so that meant that he could draw a square with one hand and draw a circle with the other hand, which for anyone who hasn't had that, it's impossible. I've tried. I spent time practicing. But he was still able to play piano beautifully and still have the communication between his hands, which is something that people look at and they're like, wait, how? That's amazing. And then there's another guy who he had a stroke and it completely cut off his ability to make long-term memories. So every 30 seconds or so, it was a new day. And he hadn't seen his wife for 30 years, every 30 seconds. So he was always so excited to see his wife when she would come in. But he used to be this amazing conductor. So he was a brilliant pianist as well. So he could still play piano. And like in the videos I saw of him playing, you saw such depth of emotion within his playing. And you wonder, like, how is he still able to play piano yet his long-term memory? He's not able to build long-term memory, but he still is able to draw on those long-term memories of him playing piano. It's a neat field, something I want to do more research in. And then we look at how can music be applied in your life? How can it be something that you participate in? I would say, like, find a way to, y'all have pianos here. You can sit down at a piano and hopefully you get to play a little bit before they kick you off. But they have pianos here and stuff that you can take advantage of. I know that there's students at UF who give lessons and they do all sorts of stuff. I don't know quite what all the logistics of that would be, but it's a beautiful thing to be able to make music with people. And it's something that draws people together and that I see as a beautiful thing to do. So that kind of gets us to the end of the presentation. Are there any questions about anything? Okay. Yep, we'll have one at the end of question time.
I can see, by the way, Bev is the lady that gave the piano in the upper level commons that you're going to test out later.
Yep.
Yes, I needed to say that.
And I have a digital piano in my apartment now, one that'll go with me when I go to assisted living and so on.
Yeah.
But what my question is how does memorizing the music compare with playing the music? I noticed you didn't have any music up there.
So for me, I look at, my reasoning for it is going to be weird, but I'm lazy. So I don't want to have to be looking up at the music and then look down at my hands and having to look back and forth and trying to do stuff. So I'll just memorize stuff. But it comes down to how you make connections with stuff. It's being able to memorize, you start creating a path for that memory. So you have one step and then that step triggers the next step. So it's kind of a feedback loop where like me playing, as I play a piece, so say I'm sitting down and I'm playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, so I think I know which way we're going. And that allows me to be able to see what happens next. And as it gets more complex, it just builds upon itself, where this last piece I'm going to play, that one is, if I didn't have it memorized, I couldn't play it. Because it's just, there's so much happening that I can't read it fast enough to be able to play it. So memory is something that it'll draw a lot of connections. It'll help keep your brain young longer and help grow what you can memorize. It's really just a matter of you learn little tools to help you. Like for me, I do a lot of rhythm practice. So where I do things like this. And then that'll turn into this when you actually learn it. So you do little things like that and you change how you do it. Yeah, it starts out as all these little pieces that all fit together, and one piece tells you what the next piece is. So then as you go, it's just, you start training your hands and your muscle memory to know what the next step is based off the step you're at. So then you get into the fun time of if you're doing repeats with stuff, then that's a whole fun thing. But yeah.
Your
Ms.
hands.
Ms. Cohn, you're going to stay young for a long time.
You will.
Your hands and your muscle act. Can't memorize anything. I've never memorized a song, and so I carry my music everywhere.
I know a lot of what helps me with memorization was that I didn't want to have to pull up my music, so I would struggle through stuff. And then having played jazz and having to do a lot of that stuff, doing a lot of oral skills where I have to hear stuff and write it down. So I'm like, oh, well, I need to know what all the intervals are. So then as I'm hearing a piece in my head, then I know what it's going to sound like on the piano. And so I know what notes I'm going to play because I have a reference note first. So it's taken years and years of practice and lots of time.
This is particularly a field that of interest for me, but I do remember there was a study that showed that children that had played an instrument at a very young age, brains developed a little bit differently in the Broca area. And I think it did have to do with their learning to read. But my question is, you probably weren't even born then, but in the 70s, there was a book saying, play Beethoven to your children and they'd be smarter. And everybody was running around playing in vitro Beethoven to their children. But does it matter, do you think, between classical and other forms of music?
So that thing about playing Beethoven, that was actually disproved in the 90s or early 2000s, I think, because they were like, that only works for while they're actively listening to the music. If you stop the music, then it dies off. If they learned how to play Beethoven, Mozart, and all that, then it stayed. I think that it's something that any music does help. I think classical music helps more than other forms, classical, jazz, and things that are more complex emotionally, because it develops that being able to understand complex emotions that you have within a piece and how to then open that up to someone else to hear and understand. So I believe classical music would work better for that. And I remember, yes, I've heard about that book that you were talking about. So it's, so I think that classical music is better than a lot of other forms, like versus like pop and rock and some other things. Like they're still great genres of music and I love listening to them. I play a lot of them. But I think that classical music is a little bit deeper emotionally, and that you're having to convey a wider range of emotions all throughout, versus with pop music, it's you have one emotion that you're at and it stays the whole piece. So you just set yourself and you just go through it. Whereas classical music, you're constantly changing emotions. Now, that's a whole nother discussion of how classical music changed from back in the 1600s, where you had your style that you were playing in and you would stay within that style, to where when you got to Mozart's time, then it was, you would have to start out in that style. Then you would go to a different style, which is a different emotion. And then you come back to that style and that emotion that you had originally. And then we changed to where by the time we get to Liszt, Rachmaninoff, around the late 1800s, we have the whole realm of emotions within such a very short bit of the music. And it requires a lot of complexity to be able to understand those emotions. And so that's why I think that classical music helps in a lot of that brain development, in addition to the memorization and the finger coordination, hand coordination that you get from playing.
Any questions on Zoom? Well, oops, I see another question back there.
This is a comment, not a question. A few weeks ago, we had a speaker who was a neuropsychomusicologist.
Ooh.
And he studied how music affects the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed in his research that if you listen to music that had a regular beat, you use certain parts of the brain, but there wasn't a whole lot of activity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you played jazz or something that was offbeat, like Scott Joplin,
Yeah.
it had all kinds of interconnections.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was sort of saying that we older people should be listening to music like that. And I thought, since you were interested in research, you might be interested. This fellow had just gotten a degree at UF and was leaving for San Francisco.
Wow, that's neat. But yeah, definitely, that's something that, I haven't seen. Yeah, it was a couple years ago. I think I saw some of the studies about that, where they were talking about the listening to music with regular pattern, like, because you're able to just kind of turn off your mind because you know what's coming. Whereas with jazz and other things, it's random to the people listening, then you have to pay attention. It creates the attentiveness that you have within that. And then I would even add to that, if you're playing those types of things, that adds even more to it, because not only are you having to hear what's happening, but you're deciding what happens. You're having to then bring people along on this whole musical journey, an emotional journey, that they don't know what beats you're playing stuff on. And it's something that you get to kind of surprise them to a certain degree with.
One last comment. If you haven't read anything by Oliver Sacks, read everything by Oliver Sacks. But he wrote a book called, I think, Music Coppola, and it is fascinating. And I first tried to listen to it in audio, and I had to buy the book. But there are amazing examples, and probably all of you have seen the movie Awakening, where they played music to have people awake from a catatonic state.
Yeah, I know that I've tried listening to some audiobooks, and I always come back to, I can't keep track of what's going on with this as I'm just listening. I gotta have the physical book in front of me, following the page. And then if I doze off with something else, then I'm able to go back and just pick up where I left off. But yeah, it's neat.
Any more questions by anybody? Well, thank you very much. That was fantastic. And you're going to play some more?
Yes, we got one more piece. I played the first little opening of it, but now you'll get the whole thing. It was a piece I played when I was here back in March. So for y'all who have been here before, sorry to bore you again, but well, we'll have fun. We'll get to play it again.
I'm glad you saved the simple piece for last. So this has been really fantastic. We're glad that you came. You're invited back anytime your studies allow you an hour or two to come off. And I think we can always arrange a lunch for you or something. So thank you so much for coming. Next week is our last session of this, but it will be on Wednesday. And if we're lucky, our speaker will be back from Tunisia by then to give us the talk. So thank you very much.